What about the means of personal development and spiritual maintenance for those who are in the pastorate? A few years ago, I had an interesting personal experience. I retired from full-time pastoring to become a full-time professor at Pentecostal Theological Seminary. After 38 years of pastoring, it was quite a transition. I expected some new discoveries along that way, but I didn't expect one discovery that I made. When I was no longer responsible for the spiritual needs of all of my people, I found myself focusing more on my own spiritual needs. I always prayed and studied, and not just when I was preaching a sermon, and yet I was constantly, as you pastors know and are called to do and are glad to do, and yet it can be, tiring, draining even. I found myself in a season of rest and refreshing. I found myself praying more, and my love of the Scriptures was revitalized. My spirit, my soul was reinvigorated. I couldn't believe. I had a pastor friend that I've known, I guess, for close to 40 years, asked me, she said, "Tony, what have you discovered since you retired from pastoring?" And I said, "I'm closer to God than I ever was. I am able to get refreshed and renewed." That convinced me that even good men and women of God, conscientious students of Scripture, devoted prayer warriors, more or less, I consider myself to be somewhere in that general category. And yet I found that when I had opportunity to really focus more on drawing closer to God, that it made a discernible difference in my life. Synergism is the idea of cooperating with grace. God's grace is working in our lives, but we must be responsive, actively responsive. I believe that pastors can benefit much by responding to the grace of God in their own life. My wife's favorite scripture is probably 1 Corinthians 15:10. Paul says, "By the grace of God, I am what I am." And when you read that, it's not just, I'm saved by grace. It's, I also serve by grace. God gives us grace to walk with Him and to serve for Him. I just love the 20th century devotional theologian pastor, A.W. Tozer. His work has ministered to me for decades. Probably my favorite or close to it is The Pursuit of God. Based on Psalm 63 and 8. It says, "I follow close after you, God." I take that as a challenge to be a God chaser, to be a fully devoted follower of Jesus Christ. Not just a follower of gospel principles or gospel truth, as essential as that is, but a follower of Jesus Himself, following closer to Him. Yes, as pastors, as Christians, as professors, but particularly those shepherds who constantly minister to others, we must make time and take the effort in order to be ourselves developed personally and formed spiritually.